I didn't lose my home the day my husband died. I didn't lose it the night the phone rang at 2 a.m. to tell me my son, Malcolm, was gone. I lost it on a quiet Thursday morning, under the same Texas sun that had lit birthday candles and Sunday dinners for decades. That porch, our porch, had always been a checkpoint for life. First day of school photos, prom corsages, the last hug before a road trip. It's where Harold and I took our coffee when the air cooled and the pecan trees shook out their shadows across the yard. It's where I watched Malcolm grow into a man who could fix anything with a socket wrench and a laugh. And that's where I stood, fingers locked around the rail Harold had sanded smooth. When my daughter-in-law ended it, Tasha came up those steps like she owned the land they were bolted to heels too sharp for Texas soil, a phone in one hand, a fresh stack of glossy real estate papers in the other. She didn't fidget, didn't stumble. Her smile was polished, her tone rehearsed, like a sales pitch for a client who was going to sign whether they liked it or not. "Lorraine," she said, meeting my eyes, "you can't stay here. This is my property now. Pack your things. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Behind her, little faces pressed to the living room glass, Jade with Harold's serious eyes, Carter with a superhero t-shirt twisted at the hem. They didn't understand every word, but they recognized a door being closed. On me. It had only been 5 days since the money hit Tasha's accounts insurance, company shares, and the trust Harold spent his whole life building brick by brick, year by year, $25 million. The number landed like a dropped anvil in our already cracked life. 5 days later, I was clutter, inconvenience, a thing in the way of a new beginning that didn't include me. I felt the wood under my palm, the faint ridge where Harold had missed a spot with the sander and said he'd get it tomorrow. I wanted to tear those papers in two. I wanted to say words I'd have to apologize for in church, but instead, something colder rose up. Not rage, something steadier. Stillness. Because some endings are just the first scene of a different story. Tasha kept talking, listing next steps and timelines and a mover she could graciously schedule for me. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it mid-sentence. Her nails were immaculate. Her earrings flashed in the late morning sun. The whole performance felt less like grief and more like a ribbon cutting. "Lorraine," she added, softer, like she was hand-delivering kindness. "You're strong, you'll land on your feet, but I have plans, and you're in the way. The words hit harder than anything, not because they were loud, but because they were true to her. Less a thought, more a belief she was finally comfortable saying out loud. Inside. The air conditioner kicked on. The pecan leaves hissed against each other like they were whispering. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower coughed to life. The ordinary sounds of our street kept going, uninterested in the fact that my life had just been rearranged. I could have argued right there. I could have called the lawyer in my contacts list and put him on speakerphone. I could have reminded her how many nights we held those babies when they were colicky, how many Sunday plates I filled for her when she said she was too busy to cook. I could have begged. Instead, I studied her face, the flat patience, the calculating tilt of her head, the practiced sympathy. She wasn't bluffing, she wasn't second-guessing. The inheritance hadn't just padded her bank account, it had rewritten her posture. "Let me say goodbye to my kitchen," I told her. "Give me the weekend." She nodded, as if granting an extension on a loan. "I'll expect your keys Monday." She left. The screen door sighed on its hinge. I stood there a long time, gripping the rail, feeling my knuckles flare white. The sun slid to the left side of the porch. I didn't cry. The tears had come and gone with Harold, then with Malcolm. This was different. This was math. This was strategy. Because here's the thing about being a woman people underestimate. We learn to store our thunder. That afternoon, I walked the rooms, our rooms like a museum docent saying, "Farewell to exhibits." The water glass beside Harold's recliner that I never moved, the scuff mark on the baseboard where Malcolm bumped a toolbox and promised to paint over it, the fridge magnet Jade made in second grade, The Lego piece Carter swore he didn't lose. None of it worth anything on paper. All of it the most valuable part of the house. I ran my fingers along the kitchen counter and remembered flour dust clouding the air when I taught Jade to cut biscuits. I pressed my palm to the hallway wall and felt, deep in bone and memory, the exact spot where Harold steadied me after his diagnosis, scare years before the heart he fought to protect gave out anyway. Houses, remember, they keep a ledger of touch. By evening, Nadine popped her head in the back door with a casserole and the kind of eye contact that says I know. She didn't ask questions. She just set the dish on the stove and squeezed my shoulder. Grief had taught us both the economy of words. Night fell. The cicadas tuned up their chattering choir. I made tea I didn't drink and stared at the porch light circle on the steps. Somewhere in that pool of warm yellow, I chose a path. Not because I wanted war, because I wanted truth to have a spine. 5 days later. Just long enough for me to fold the dish towels and decide which ones I would not leave. The same heels clicked up my porch, but this time they faltered. Tasha didn't stand. She didn't pose. She didn't speak like a listing agent on a deadline. She went down on her knees right where the light hit the edge of the top step. Her mascara had bled into riverbeds down her cheeks. Her hair was undone, as if her day had come apart faster than she could pin it back. Her voice wasn't smooth. It was scraped raw. "Lorraine," she whispered, reaching for my hands like they were an anchor. "Please, I need you. I can't fix this without you." The same sun, the same porch, the same rail Harold left unfinished in one stubborn corner, and the same woman, overturned by something you can't buy an exit from. I didn't rush forward. I didn't gloat. I didn't say I told you. I stood where I had stood the first time and felt the story pivot. Not because I forgave her. Not yet. Because I understood what 5 days can do to a fortune built on paper and ego. How does $25 million turn into begging in 5 days? Lean in. Because if money can grow bigger than blood in Dallas, in Atlanta, in Toronto, in London, in Sydney, it can happen anywhere. In any family, on any porch. Let me ask you something before we go further, before I tell you about the signatures that didn't look like my son's. The emails that sounded like sharks smiling. The parties thrown in my living room by strangers with expensive watches. The friend who folded under pressure and the mother-in-law who didn't. If your daughter-in-law inherited a fortune and told you to leave the home you built with your husband's sweat in the studs and your son's laughter in the paint, what would you do? Would you pack quietly and bless her on the way out? Would you fight loud and fast, hurling every threat and lawyer's name you could recall, or would you do what I did watch? Listen, note every detail, and wait for the place where the truth slips. So when you pull the thread, the whole sweater unravels. Drop a pin where you're listening from Dallas, Atlanta, Toronto, London, Sydney. Because geography changes the skyline, not the human heart. Money tests families the same way lightning tests a tree. It doesn't create the crack, it finds it. I'll tell you what happened on my porch. I'll tell you what she confessed, and what she hid, and why she came back to kneel on the same step where she'd ordered me to leave. I'll tell you about the stillness that grew inside me like a wall you can't see until someone walks into it. And I'll ask you again, at the end, to decide what justice looks like when blood gets noisy and lawyers get louder. But for now, hold this picture. A grandmother with flour on her apron that wouldn't wash out. A house that kept the sound of every birthday song it ever heard. A woman who thought $25 million could rewrite a family in 5 days later. A pair of knees on a porch step, mascara melting. The word please ragged in the air. This wasn't the end of anything. This was the beginning. A house isn't measured by square footage or appraisals. It's measured by the echoes it keeps. Our home in DeSoto wasn't grand, no marble floors, no sweeping staircase, but it carried something better proof that love could be nailed into beams and poured into concrete. Harold built this place with his own hands. I can still see him, sweat darkening his work shirt, hammer steady in his grip, grinning like a boy every time a wall stood taller than him. He planted pecan trees out front, telling me, one day, we'll sit under their shade and remember what we grew. He didn't live long enough for that. 3 years ago. His heart gave out in the garden while tending his tomatoes. One moment, he was alive with dirt under his fingernails. The next moment, gone. The paramedics tried. But the house fell into silence that day, the kind of silence that follows you into every room. I filled it the best I could. Choir hymns playing through the old radio, neighbors dropping by with pie and gossip, the laughter of my grandchildren chasing dust motes through sunlit halls, and Malcolm, our only son, made sure I was never alone. Every Sunday, he came home. He carried groceries, teased me for watching too many courtroom dramas, fixed gutters I could no longer climb to reach. He was my bridge between Harold's absence and a future I wasn't sure I wanted. Then, 4 months ago, the phone rang at 2 a.m, a sound sharp enough to cut the dark. The officer's voice was low, apologetic, and I felt my chest hollow before he even said the words. A highway crash, a twisted pile of metal. My boy gone before dawn, another coffin lowered into red Texas soil, another silence heavier than the last. At the funeral, Tasha stood beside me, the perfect widow. Black dress fitted, veil draped just right, arms wrapped around Jade and Carter. Her tears looked practiced, each dab of her lace handkerchief perfectly timed. To everyone else, she was grief embodied, but I noticed. Her eyes kept flicking downward to her phone, screen glowing under her veil. Her thumb moved quick, her jaw tight. She looked less like a woman mourning and more like a woman conducting business between condolences. I told myself it was nerves, or distraction, or a way to cope. But a seed of doubt rooted itself inside me that day, small but alive. The children were the only light left. Jade, 9 years old, already had Harold's steady eyes. She asked questions too sharp for her age, questions that lingered like smoke. She noticed when Tasha stopped sitting with me in church, when shopping bags multiplied at the porch, when her mother whispered into the night like she was hiding something. One evening, as I brushed her hair, Jade whispered, "Grandma, Mom says Daddy wanted her to dress better, to live bigger. But Daddy never bought fancy things. Did he?" I froze, brush in hand, and no, baby. Your daddy was simple. He believed in steady, not flashy. Her eyes lowered. She already knew the truth. Carter, only 6, still lived in the world of superheroes and games. But even he sensed the shift. One night he tugged at my sleeve and whispered, "Grandma, Mom says we're getting a big pool. Can you come swim with us?" We didn't even have the yard for a pool. His innocence nearly broke me. Nadine, my best friend and next-door neighbor, had been watching too. Widowed for a decade, she knew grief's patterns well enough to recognize when something wasn't grief at all. One morning, over coffee, she leaned across her kitchen table and said, "Lorraine, that girl is moving different. Not like a widow, not like a mother, like someone chasing something bigger. Keep your eyes open." I brushed her off. I wanted to believe Tasha's choices were harmless, that she was coping in her own way. But Nadine's words echoed. And then there was Ms. TB, 68, retired bank compliance officer, sharp as glass. She could sniff out financial trouble the way most folks smelled rain. When she heard that Tasha had inherited the trust Harold spent decades building along with Malcolm's insurance, her eyebrow arched higher than I'd ever seen. $25 million will change a person faster than death will, she warned. Watch her choices. Watch the accounts. I smiled politely, but her words lodged like splinters. Tasha's mother, Renee, drifted in and out of the house like a perfume you can't scrub away. Glamorous, loud, her rings flashing under every light. But behind the glitter was desperation. Rumors swirled gambling debts, shady loan sharks. One evening, I caught her clutching Tasha's arm in the den, both of their faces drawn tight. I should have asked questions, but instead I turned away. I told myself it wasn't my place. Even Reverend Hale, our pastor, noticed something in her. After Malcolm's funeral, he pulled me aside gently. "Be careful. Lorraine, money after death. It can unite a family, or it can destroy it." At the time, I still believed we'd hold together. But then the cracks widened. Tasha started skipping Sunday dinners, claiming she had clients to meet. Her wardrobe turned glossier by the week. Jade confided that her mother spent more time on the computer than with them. One night, I passed her office and caught a glimpse of papers spread across her desk: contracts, property maps, scribbled figures. She spotted me in the doorway, flipped the pages over, and smiled too quickly. Just work. Lorraine, nothing important. But the air between us shifted that night. I tried to anchor myself in ordinary routines: morning walks with Nadine, peach cobbler on Saturdays with Jade, bedtime stories for Carter, Sunday service, rain or shine. I told myself if I held the patterns tightly enough, they would hold us together, but ordinary was slipping away. Then came the phone call I wasn't meant to hear. Tasha stood in the kitchen, voice sharp, urgent. I can't wait months. The money's in place. My mother is expecting this. I need that property signed now. The words froze me in the hallway. She turned when she saw me standing there, silence heavy. Then she set her phone down and smiled, smooth as glass. Just a client, nothing important, but everything in me screamed otherwise, looking back. I asked myself, should I have confronted her right then? Should I have pulled those papers from under her hand, demanded answers, called an attorney before it all spiraled? Maybe, but at the time, I wanted to believe in family, in loyalty, in the fragile thread that still tied us together. I wanted to believe she wouldn't betray Harold's legacy, or Malcolm's memory, or the children she was raising. That belief blinded me, because betrayal had already rooted itself in my home, and it was growing. One whisper, one forged page, one secret phone call at a time. Grief has a rhythm. At first, it's loud neighbors dropping off casseroles, church friends calling every night, the living room crowded with folding chairs and stories of the dead. Then, like all rhythms, it fades. The phone rings less. The door stays closed. People return to their own lives, and yours becomes a quiet you didn't choose. But the quiet in our house wasn't natural. It was thick, like the air before a storm. It began with the mail. One afternoon, I bent to gather envelopes from the porch, expecting bills, a church bulletin, maybe a coupon flyer. Instead, 3 thick packets waited, stamped with names I didn't know: a Dallas law firm, a property management group in Austin, even a bank Harold never used. I stacked them on the counter, meaning to ask later. Before I could, Tasha brushed in, scooped them up with a too bright smile, and slid them into her leather bag. Confidential client work, she said. Her tone was brisk, practiced, final. That was the first hairline crack. The next came with the phone calls. At night, when the house should have been still, I'd hear Tasha pacing the kitchen. Her voice was low but sharp, the words just loud enough to sting. No, I want the papers finalized this week. Yes, the trust is mine to manage. Don't talk to me about risk. Just make it happen. Whenever I walked in for a glass of water. She ended the call mid-sentence, sliding her phone face down onto the counter. She'd flash that same polite smile. Business, Lorraine. You wouldn't understand. The way she said it, like I was too old, too small, too sentimental, struck me deeper than the words themselves. Then money began to leave fingerprints. Boxes arrived daily. Shoes I'd only seen in glossy magazines at the beauty salon. Jewelry boxes with names whispered like spells. A contractor dropped off plans for a pool we didn't have land for. Carter dragged a giant cardboard box across the floor one morning, grinning ear to ear. "Grandma, look, a new TV for my room." I stared at the screen still wrapped in plastic. Larger than the one in my living room. "Where's your old one?" Baby mom gave it to Uncle Derek. Derek, her brother. Always between jobs, always with a scheme, always needing more than he earned. Bills stopped arriving. The electric statement, the property taxes, even Harold's pension notice gone from the mailbox. When I asked, Tasha waved her manicured hand. "All automated now. Don't stress about it," but the login I'd used for years suddenly didn't work. The password had been changed. I might have convinced myself it was modernization, if not for Jade. 9 years old. sharp as her grandfather and braver than most grown folks. She folded towels with me one night and whispered, "Grandma, Mommy says Daddy didn't want you living here forever. Is that true?" The words froze me mid-fold. "What makes you say that, sweetheart?" She told me it was Daddy's wish that she decides everything now, but Daddy never said that to you, right? Her small hands pressed the towel flat, waiting for my answer like it was scripture. "No, Jade," I whispered. "Your daddy wanted us together. Don't forget that." Her lips tightened. Her eyes said she already knew something wasn't right. Nadine noticed too. She'd watch delivery trucks idle outside and raise her eyebrows over morning walks. "Lorraine, that girl's spending like she hit the lottery," she muttered one day. Did Malcolm really leave her that much Harold set up trusts? I admitted. But he was careful. He wouldn't have wanted this. "Careful men don't build paper houses," she said. "Keep your eyes open." And then Ms. B came knocking. 68, retired bank officer, sharp enough to slice steel. She laid county clerk filings on her dining table, her glasses perched halfway down her nose. "Look here," she said. "Deeds. Tasha's name on half a dozen properties already. Fast cash buys, no mortgages." "How could she buy so much so soon?" I asked, my stomach tightening, her lips pressed thin. "Either the trust released funds immediately, or she's playing with documents, and honey, I don't like the handwriting." I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to believe blood still meant loyalty. But the evidence stacked faster than I could fold it away. The breaking point came on an ordinary afternoon. Carter spilled orange juice on the kitchen table. As I wiped it up, the rag smeared across a stack of papers Tasha had left out. The juice soaked into the top page, blurring ink. My eyes caught a line before I could stop them. Transfer of beneficiary rights. Below it, a signature. My son's name, except it wasn't his hand. I'd seen Malcolm's signature 1,000 times on birthday cards, job contracts, even school permission slips. This one was stiff, clumsy, lifeless. Worse, the date stamped beside it was days after the night he died on that highway. My blood went cold. I set the page down as carefully as if it might bite me. That evening, I confronted her gentle, tentative, still clinging to the hope of mistake. "Tasha," I said softly, holding the juice-stained page. "Why does this look like Malcolm signed it? He was already gone when this was dated." Her eyes narrowed, just for a second, then smoothed into practiced calm. "You're confused, Lorraine. These are complex legal matters. Malcolm trusted me. Don't embarrass yourself pretending to understand." She plucked the paper from my hand, slid it into her briefcase, and kissed my cheek like she was tucking me into bed. "Try to rest, Lorraine. Let me handle everything." That night, I lay awake listening to the hum of the air conditioner, the steady tick of the hallway clock, and the whisper of pecan leaves outside the window. But beneath those sounds was something louder, the truth finally knocking. The girl who'd once sat at my table laughing with Malcolm, the woman who'd walked down the aisle in lace and vows, the mother of my grandchildren, she had become a stranger, and the stranger was hiding something. Was this her plan all along? Had grief simply revealed who she'd always been? I didn't have answers yet, but I knew one thing: silence wouldn't save me. Not this time. So I started doing the smallest, bravest thing I knew. I wrote it down. Every packet of mail, every hushed phone call, every vanished bill, every lie wrapped in a polite smile. I began to collect them like stones in my pocket, because stones, if you have enough, can build a wall. And I had every intention of building mine. Suspicion is a shadow, it follows you around, stretches longer the later it gets, but suspicion alone doesn't save you. Proof does, and proof has a weight to it. Heavy, cold, final. The first undeniable proof didn't arrive in a dramatic explosion. It came in the most ordinary way through a phone call. I was on the porch with my morning coffee when my cell buzzed, "Miss Mona Sullivan," a polite male voice. This is Daniel Perez from Lone Star Bank. We're calling to confirm a wire transfer request made under your household account. $488,000 directed to a title company in Austin. My heart dropped. That can't be right, I said quickly. I haven't authorized any transfer. The officer hesitated. It was initiated online using credentials tied to your residence. Mrs. Tasha Sullivan provided supporting documents. We just need your final confirmation. Supporting documents. My son's name. No doubt. I forced my voice steady. Cancel it immediately. Do not release a dime. After that call, the porch didn't feel safe anymore. Even the pecan trees seemed to bend under the weight of what I'd just heard. That afternoon, I went to Ms. B's house. She had already laid papers across her dining table, glasses perched low on her nose, her robe still buttoned from mourning. She listened carefully as I told her about the bank call. Then she tapped her pen against the table, sharp as a gavel. She's already moving funds. Lorraine. Large sums. Too clean. Too fast. She's not just reckless, she's laundering. The word chilled me. Laundering. That wasn't grief, or even greed. That was crime. That night, while Tasha took Jaden Carter to a school fundraiser, I slipped into her office. The room smelled of perfume and printer ink. Her desk looked immaculate, as if staged for a photograph, but one drawer left unlocked betrayed her. Inside were folders labeled in her handwriting: Oakwood Estates, Lakeside Development, Harbor Creek. Each stuffed with contracts, purchase agreements, wire receipts, and tucked behind them, an envelope marked simply private. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were copies of signatures that made my blood run cold. Harold's, Malcolm's, even mine. I carried the envelope to my room and laid it on the bed beside old cards and letters we'd saved. The difference was undeniable. Harold's loops had always leaned left. Malcolm's pen strokes always pressed too hard on the downstroke. These signatures were lifeless imitations, stiff as mannequins. Would anyone believe me? I clutched the envelope like a lifeline when Nadine knocked at my door that evening, cornbread pan in her hands. She took one look at my pale face, then at the papers spread across the quilt. She sat down slowly. Lorraine. What on earth? I showed her everything. The forgeries, the wire receipts, the false signatures. This isn't carelessness, she said after a long silence. This is a scheme. That girl isn't just reckless, she's deliberate. The next morning, I carried the envelope to Harold's old attorney, Mr. Gaines. His office smelled of cedar and dust, lined with law books that looked older than me. But the man himself was sharp glasses perched, eyes narrowing as he flipped through each page. At last, he set the stack down and looked at me with the kind of seriousness that makes your throat tighten. Mrs. Sullivan, this is fraud, serious fraud. These aren't sloppy mistakes, they're calculated. My voice cracked. What can I do? He leaned back, steepling his fingers. First, we secure copies of everything. Second, we notify the bank in writing. Third, we prepare quietly. If she suspects, she'll destroy evidence. I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. Did Harold ever update his will in a way I didn't know? I asked softly. Gaines shook his head firmly. No, he discussed every change with me. His priority was always you. Then Malcolm, then the grandchildren. He never intended to leave you unprotected. If someone tells you otherwise, they're lying. The weight of betrayal pressed heavier than grief ever had. That evening, Tasha breezed into the kitchen, heels clicking against the tile. You're still awake, she asked, setting her handbag on the counter. I was waiting, I said evenly. For what? For the truth. Her eyes flickered, but her smile never faltered. Lorraine, you've been under stress. Grief clouds judgment. Don't. My voice surprised me, steady as stone. I saw the documents, the forgeries, the bank calls. I know. For a moment. Silence stretched. Then she laughed softly, shaking her head like I was a child. You don't understand how these things work. Malcolm trusted me. I'm securing our future. Yours too. If you'd let me. Our future, I repeated. Or yours and your mother's. The smile slipped. Her eyes hardened. You've been digging. And I'll keep digging. She leaned closer, voice dropping. Be careful, Lorraine. You don't want to make enemies out of family? The words weren't loud, but they landed like a slap. Later that night, I sat in the darkened living room, the refrigerator hum steady, the clock ticking loud. For the first time since Harold died, something new settled in me. Not grief, not helplessness. Resolve. Tasha thought I was fragile, powerless, too sentimental to matter. But Harold hadn't built me that way. I'd spent decades balancing checkbooks, working double shifts as a nurse, raising a family, burying the men I loved, and still standing. If she wanted a war, she'd chosen the wrong opponent. The next morning, Jade came quietly to my room before school. She pressed a folded paper into my hand. Mom said I shouldn't show you this, she whispered, but I think you need to see. I unfolded it carefully. A bank receipt. A wire transfer for $250,000, signed with Malcolm's name. Dated after his death. I hugged her tightly, my heart breaking and hardening at the same time. You've done the right thing, baby, I whispered. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was staring me in the face, bold as ink. Tasha had crossed the line from suspicion to crime. And the house Harold built, the family we'd nurtured, the grandchildren I swore to protect, all of it was tangled in her web. The only question left was how to untangle it before she destroyed everything. The morning after Jade slipped that bank receipt into my hand, something inside me shifted. Suspicion was gone. Doubt was gone. What I held was proof, and proof demanded action. I couldn't let my grandchildren grow up in a house where fraud hid in every drawer. So I drove into downtown Dallas, back to Mr. Gaines's office. His building smelled of leather and old dust, lined with books thick enough to outlive us all. Gaines was as steady as ever, glasses perched low, voice calm. He turned each page, slowly wire transfers signed with Malcolm's dead hand, forged deeds, shell companies with Tasha's name. His brow tightened. Mrs. Sullivan, he said at last, this isn't just unethical. It's criminal. Felony-level fraud. Your daughter-in-law could face charges that put her behind bars. The word felony chilled me. Tasha was the mother of my grandchildren. Part of me recoiled at the thought. But another part of me hardened. What do? I whispered. You gather everything, Gaines said firmly. Every receipt, every letter, every odd phone call. Build a trail she cannot erase. But be discreet. If she knows you're collecting evidence, she'll burn it before anyone sees it. So I came home with new eyes. Every drawer, every cabinet, every careless scrap of paper could be a clue. I began my quiet search always at night, always when Tasha was distracted by her phone or away at her so-called client meetings. I found envelopes shoved behind books, post-it notes with account numbers scribbled in hurried ink, files labeled with property names I didn't recognize. And then, hidden inside a shoebox in the closet, I found it a small thumb drive. I didn't dare open it at home. Instead, I slipped it into my purse and walked across the street to Nadine's house. Her grandson set up her old laptop, and together Nadine and I sat at her kitchen table, hearts pounding, the screen filled with scanned documents. Deeds, wire transfers, purchase contracts, and then the emails, from Tasha to her mother, Renee. Had to use Malcolm's signature again. Risky. But no one's checking. By the time anyone looks, we'll have flipped it. I covered my mouth with my hand. Nadine's eyes widened, her hand pressing over her chest. Lorraine, this isn't recklessness. She's building an empire on lies. That evening, I walked back into my kitchen. Tasha stood by the counter, glass of wine in hand, scrolling her phone. She looked up casually. Long day, I set Nadine's cornbread pan on the counter. My voice didn't shake. Busy enough. I was helping Nadine with her laptop. Her eyes flickered just for a second, but I saw it. Fear. Recognition. Then the mask slid back. You should rest more, she said smoothly. Grief takes a toll. I leaned closer, my words sharp. Grief doesn't forge signatures. The glass paused halfway to her lips. "I know, Tasha," I said quietly. "I've seen the documents. The transfers, the emails." Her knuckles whitened on the glass stem, but she smiled, thin and icy. "You've been snooping. I've been protecting Harold's legacy, Malcolm's memory, and those children upstairs who deserve better than this." Her tone dropped to a whisper. "Careful, Lorraine. You don't want to start a war you can't win." But what she didn't realize was that I had already started it that night. I couldn't sleep. I spread papers across my desk, scribbling timelines, connecting dots. This wasn't just reckless spending. It was a network. Properties across Texas, money funneling faster than grief, Renee whispering in the background. I thought of Carter's innocent drawings, Jade's sharp questions, the way they still ran to me for comfort, and fury rose inside me, not the kind that blinds, but the kind that sharpens. She thought I was powerless. She thought age had dulled me, but she didn't know who she was up against. The following Sunday, after church, I stayed behind and confided in Reverend Hale. His voice was always steady, his hands kind. But when I told him about the forgeries, the transfers, the lies, his face darkened. "Lorraine," he said gently, "this isn't just sin, this is crime. Have you thought about going to the police?" "Not yet," I admitted, "if she's arrested too soon. Those children lose their mother, and she'll paint me as a bitter old widow trying to steal from her." He nodded slowly. "Then you need to be wiser than her. Shine light where she least expects it." Meanwhile, Tasha's arrogance grew bolder. Contractors came to measure the backyard for a pool. New furniture arrived by the truckload. Jade whispered that her mother promised a big new house soon, one where Grandma wouldn't have to worry anymore. The arrogance made my stomach turn. Then one evening, Carter tugged at me, clutching a drawing from school. It showed a house with a pool. Stick figures Tasha, Renee, Jade, and Carter, but no Grandma. "Mom says we're moving soon," he chirped. "You'll visit." "Right." Tears stung my eyes, but I smiled and kissed his head. He didn't need to know yet, but I knew in my bones this wasn't just money anymore. This was erasure. I couldn't wait any longer, so I began building my own case. Every receipt, every overheard call, every document Jade dared to slip me. Nadine helped gather copies. Misawa B, with her sharp banking eye, connected the financial patterns. We stored duplicates in safe places. I even bought a small lockbox for myself. Tasha thought she was playing chess alone. She thought she was the queen, moving pawns across the board, but she hadn't noticed I'd already started moving my own pieces. The conflict was rising like thunder over the plains, and in the center of it, Tasha kept smiling, spending, forging, unaware that the woman she thought powerless was already setting the board for her downfall. I thought I had the picture. Tasha's arrogance, the forged signatures, the money flying faster than grief, all of it seemed like the betrayal. I thought I'd uncovered the heart of it. But the thing about betrayal is, it never sits alone. It comes in layers, hidden deeper than you want to dig. And when you do dig, the ground caves in. It began with a knock at my door. Miss B stood there, umbrella dripping, a thick folder clutched in her hand, her lips pressed tight, eyes sharp as glass. She didn't even wait for an invitation. She walked straight into my dining room and spread the papers across the table. Property records, loan applications, insurance forms. "Look here," she said, tapping a line with her pen. "These aren't just forged documents, these are co-signed applications. By someone else." My brow furrowed. "Who?" Her pen circled the name, Renee Calloway, Tasha's mother. My stomach twisted. Renee wasn't just whispering in corners, egging her daughter on. She was signing her name to the schemes. "These loans," B explained, her voice low, "were pushed through using both their names. Tasha provided access to Malcolm's estate. Renee brought in connections with lenders who don't ask questions. Together, they've created a funnel pulling millions into shell companies faster than the eye can follow." I sank into my chair. "So this isn't just greed, it's a machine." B nodded grimly. "And it's bigger than you think. That evening, I tried to hold on to normal. Dinner with Jade and Carter, a board game, bedtime prayers. But the knowledge gnawed at me like termites in wood. When the house finally quieted, I crept into Tasha's office again. I searched her desk drawer carefully, and there it was, a business card tucked into a folder, Strickland and Hayes Financial Consulting. I didn't know the name, but scrawled on the back was a note: Renee says they'll handle everything. Call before Friday the next morning. Nadine drove me downtown. The building was glass and marble, polished until it gleamed. The receptionist was too perfect, her smile rehearsed. I asked for Mr. Strickland. She blinked. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, steady. But tell him Lorraine Sullivan is here. He'll want to see me. I don't know where the confidence came from, maybe from Harold. Echoing through me. And 10 minutes later, a tall man in an expensive suit appeared. Smooth smile, cold handshake. Miss Emma Sullivan, he said warmly. To what do I owe the pleasure? We sat in his office, sunlight bouncing off skyscrapers behind him. I know my daughter-in-law and her mother are working with you, I said plainly. I want to know why. For a moment. His mask slipped. Then he chuckled softly, leaning back. Mrs. Sullivan, business is business. Your son left quite an estate. Tasha is simply ensuring it grows. Renee introduced us. Perfectly legal. We're talking acquisitions, expansions, opportunities. His tone was honey, but his eyes were knives. I placed one of the forged receipts on his desk. Is this legal too? Silence. His smile sharpened. Less charm, more warning. Careful, Mrs. Sullivan. You're wandering into waters that are deep. I left shaken. In the elevator, Nadine gripped my arm. That man knows more than he admitted. She was right. The air around him smelled of secrets. That evening, I decided to test Tasha. Over dinner, I asked casually. Jade mentioned something about a new company, Harbor Creek. Was it sounds exciting? Her fork froze mid-air. Her eyes flicked to me, quick as lightning, then softened into a smile. Just investments, she said lightly. You wouldn't understand the details. Try me, I replied, sharper than I meant. Her lips curved, but the smile never touched her eyes. Don't worry, Lorraine. Everything I'm doing is for the children, their future. But her hand trembled as she lifted her glass. Later that night, Jade tiptoed into my room. Grandma, she whispered. Mom and Nana Renee were fighting. Nana said something about getting caught. My heart pounded. What exactly did you hear? Baby, they said if the papers come out, everything will fall apart. And Mom said, don't worry, I already switched the files. Her little face brimmed with fear. Grandma, are we going to lose our house? I hugged her close. Not if I can help it. The next morning, I went straight back to Gaines with everything: the card, the overheard fight, the files B had dug up. He listened, quiet, his brow furrowed. Then he leaned forward, voice low. Lorraine, this isn't just fraud anymore. This is conspiracy. With Renee involved, with Strickland pulling strings, this borders on organized crime. The words hit like a blow. Organized crime. I've seen cases like this. Gaines said, when money moves this fast, this quietly, it's rarely just family ambition. Someone bigger is steering the wheel. I left his office with my heart thudding like a drum. That evening, Renee left her purse behind after dinner. For once, her mistake was my chance. Inside, I found a checkbook, but the name printed at the top wasn't hers. Strickland and Hayes Holdings, LLC. One stub showed a payment of $100,000. Memo Line Consulting, Sullivan Estate. It all clicked at once. Tasha hadn't just betrayed me. She hadn't just twisted Malcolm's memory. She and Renee had partnered with men in suits. Sharks smiling behind glass walls who were bleeding Harold's legacy dry. The forgeries, the lies, the arrogance, those were just the surface. The real danger was deeper, darker, with roots spreading far beyond my family's front porch. That night, lying in the dark, I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above me. I had thought I was battling a greedy widow. Instead, I was standing at the edge of a network that would crush me without blinking. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. By the time I uncovered Renee's connection with Strickland and Hayes, I thought I had reached the heart of the storm. Tasha and her mother weren't just greedy. They were building an empire on lies, tied to men in glass towers. I thought I knew my enemy, but betrayal always comes closer than you think. It began with a phone call. I had just put Carter down for a nap when the cordless phone in the kitchen rang. Caller ID unknown number. My instinct told me not to answer, but I did, at first. Silence. Then a man's voice low, firm, without hesitation. You tell Malcolm's widow to stop digging, or the deal collapses. My blood froze. Malcolm's widow, they weren't talking about me. They meant Tasha. But why call this number unless someone close to me, someone who knew my house? My life had given it to them. The line went dead before I could speak. The next day, Nadine stopped by with her usual sweet tea, but her hands fidgeted. Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. You all right? I asked, studying her face. She forced a smile. Just tired, you know how it is. But when she set the pitcher on the counter, a folded slip of paper slipped from her purse. I bent to pick it up before she could stop me. A receipt for a wire transfer, $25,000, paid to Strickland and Hayes Holdings, signed by Nadine Clark. The world tilted. My best friend, my neighbor, my sister in grief. That evening, I sat with her on her porch, cicadas buzzing in the humid air. How long? I asked quietly. Her lips trembled. Lorraine, how long have you been helping them? Tears welled in her eyes. Her voice cracked. After Harold died, Renee told me he'd left debts, that they could ruin you. She promised to protect us both if I just shared information. I was desperate. Lorraine, I thought I was saving you. My chest tightened. You gave them our secrets, our vulnerabilities. You gave them me. I thought I was protecting you. She pleaded. Renee said if I cooperated, you'd be safe. I never imagined Tasha would push this far. Her words burned hotter than fire. Nadine, who held my hand at Harold's funeral, who prayed with me at Malcolm's grave she had been feeding my enemies. That night, I couldn't sleep. Betrayal is sharp, but when it comes from your own friend, it cuts deeper than family. Tasha was greedy. Renee was manipulative. Strickland was cold, but Nadine was mine, my confidant, my anchor. If she could be bought, who could I trust the next morning? I tested her. I'm meeting with Mr. Gaines tomorrow, I told her over coffee. He thinks it's time we involve the authorities. Her eyes widened, panic flashing. Authorities, Lorraine, maybe it's better to settle quietly. Court would be ugly for everyone. And there it was. Confirmation, she wasn't just guilty before she was still feeding them. Meanwhile, Tasha grew bolder. One evening, she threw a dinner in my house without asking. Contractors, investors, strangers in suits sipped wine in Harold's living room like they owned it. I stood at the top of the stairs, watching my home transform into a showroom for greed. When Tasha caught my eye, she raised her glass with a smirk, enjoying the party. Lorraine, this is the future, our future. My chest burned, built on lies and forgeries. Her smirk widened, built on power, something you never understood. The laughter of strangers echoed through the hall where Harold once told bedtime stories to Malcolm. I felt like a ghost in my own home. After the guests left, I followed her into the kitchen. You've dragged strangers into Harold's home, I said, voice shaking. The home of your children. Do you feel no shame? She poured another glass of wine, calm as stone. Shame doesn't build legacies, she said. Money does. Position does. Renee taught me that. And honestly, Lorraine, you should thank me. I'm taking us into the future. You're just too sentimental to see it. Her arrogance was like acid, but that slip Renee taught me confirmed everything. 2 nights later, the next twist landed. I returned from the store to find Jade waiting on the porch. eyes wide. "Grandma," she whispered. "Mom was yelling on the phone. She said if you don't sign the house papers, she'll make Uncle Derek handle it." My stomach turned. Uncle Derek Jade nodded. She said he knows how to fix things. Derek, Tasha's brother, always in trouble, always one step from a cell, fraud arrests, DUIs, and now, apparently, her fixer. The picture snapped into place. It wasn't just Tasha, Renee, and Strickland. It was Nadine, compromised by debt. Derek, a criminal tool waiting in the wings, a web tightening around me, spun by hands I once trusted, and they thought I was the fly. That night, I sat in Harold's old study, the lamplight casting long shadows. My grief, my fury, my heartbreak, they fused into something sharper. They thought they had me cornered, too old, too weak, too sentimental to fight. But they had forgotten I had survived worse storms. I'd buried a husband. I'd buried a son. I'd rebuilt from ashes before. And now, I had the truth. The betrayal was bigger than money, bigger than property. It was about erasure, about wiping me from the very legacy Harold and I had built. I looked at Harold's photo on the desk and whispered, "They think they've won, but they don't know me. Not yet." There comes a moment in every storm when fear hardens into focus. For months, I'd lived bent under loss, Harold's sudden heart attack, Malcolm's wreck on that dark highway, Tasha's cruelty dripping like poison into my home. But when Nadine's betrayal came to light, something in me finally cracked and stayed cracked. No more tears. No more waiting. If they wanted to treat me like the fragile old woman rocking on the porch swing, they were about to learn what underestimation costs. I wasn't planning to fight with rage or fists. My revenge would be quiet, patient, impossible to escape. The kind of justice that doesn't leave bruises, only consequences. I locked myself in Harold's study, shutting the door against the noise of the world. The mahogany desk disappeared beneath papers, receipts, scribbled notes. It looked like the evidence wall of one of my courtroom dramas. I began to build a timeline. 4 months ago, Malcolm's accident, insurance released, trust unlocked. 2 weeks later, first forged transfer under Malcolm's signature. 3 months ago, Renee introduced Tasha to Strickland and Hayes. Nadine's steady small payments, hush money disguised as debt relief. Derek mentioned by Jade, likely fixing paperwork in the background. When I stepped back, I no longer saw a greedy widow. I saw a web, a small criminal enterprise wrapped around my family's grief like barbed wire. And I knew if I didn't cut it loose, it would strangle everything Harold and I built. I went back to Gaines. His office smelled of cedar and old ink. I laid out every piece I had. He listened, his face tightening. "Lorraine, this isn't a family matter anymore. This is fraud on a grand scale. If you bring this to the DA tomorrow, they'll file charges before the week is out." My heart pounded, and if I moved too soon, he adjusted his glasses. "She'll claim grief, confusion, say you're unstable. They'll paint you as a bitter widow trying to ruin the mother of your grandchildren. You don't want sympathy, you want proof, unshakable proof." I leaned forward. "Then I need a trap. Something airtight, something she can't twist." His gaze sharpened. "Then we build one." I couldn't rely on Nadine anymore. That wound was still raw, but Miss B, sharp-eyed, retired compliance officer, she had the instincts of a bloodhound. I invited her one humid afternoon, blinds drawn, papers spread across the dining table. Her eyes gleamed as she flipped through contracts and wire transfers. "Lorraine, you've done half the work already. What you need now is order. Prosecutors love clean trails A to B to C. Can you help me?" I asked. She smiled slyly. "Honey, I spent 30 years catching men who thought they were too clever to be caught. Watching this unfold, this is the most fun I've had since retirement. Let's hang them with their own rope." I dug through Malcolm's closet one night and found an old voice recorder he used for work. Small, discreet, easy to slip into an apron pocket. From then on, I carried it with me, during dinners, casual chats, even arguments, and what it captured was chilling Renee. Relax. By the time Lorraine notices, the house will already be in my name. She's old. She won't fight back. She'll thank us eventually. The kids deserve better than her clinging to the past. Each word was a nail in their coffin, but recordings weren't enough. I needed witnesses. So I began planting seeds. At Sunday service, I whispered to Jade and Carter that we'd have a special family dinner soon. Their faces lit up. Then I let Nadine overhear me mentioning it to Miss Bay. I knew Nadine would run straight to Renee. Perfect, Miss. B suggested one more ally, her old colleague, Detective Harris. Retired, but still licensed as a consultant. We met quietly at her house. He was calm, gray-haired, with a notebook always in his hand. Family dinners, he said with a knowing smile, can be very revealing. If you want the truth to come out, you need the right audience. He agreed to sit silently at the table, nothing more than a friend of B's, but his ears and his pen would be sharper than any camera. I asked Gaines to prepare a copy of Harold's will, not a fake just highlighted in neon marker. Every line proving Harold left the house and majority assets to me. I placed it deliberately on the kitchen counter. By evening, it was gone. That night, Tasha stormed into the den, waving the paper like a victory flag. "You think this will save you?" she sneered. "Harold's gone. Malcolm's gone. This house, this money, it's mine now." Her words dripped arrogance. She didn't realize my recorder was running in my pocket. That night, I sat in Harold's study. His photo looked down at me from the shelf, that familiar half-smile frozen in time. "You always said I was too patient." I whispered, "Too forgiving." Well, Harold, patience is about to pay off. For too long, I'd played the grieving widow, the polite grandmother, the invisible woman in her own home. No more. This wasn't rage. This was resolve. I wasn't lashing out. I was setting the stage. Paper. Evidence. Witnesses, he knows. Truth. The kind of revenge that doesn't just topple the guilty, it unmasks them, forces them to choke on their own lies right in front of the people they tried to fool. As I tucked Jade into bed that night, she squeezed my hand. "Grandma, are we safe?" I kissed her forehead. "We will be, sweetheart, very soon, and for the first time in months." I wasn't lying. The trap was set, the stage prepared, the dinner planned. Tasha thought she was the queen, moving pawns wherever she pleased, but she hadn't noticed the checkmate already forming. Because when the curtain rose on that family dinner, every lie, every forgery, every secret would collapse not in whispers, but in the bright, undeniable light of truth. Family dinners used to mean comfort in our house. Harold's brisket on the smoker, Malcolm teasing me for burning cornbread, Jade and Carter racing through the hallway. But tonight wasn't about comfort. Tonight, my dining room was a stage, and I was ready to raise the curtain. I spent the day cooking the way Harold would have wanted roast chicken, collard greens, peach cobbler still warm from the oven. Familiar smells filled the air, lulling everyone into believing this was just another Sunday meal. At 6 sharp, the players arrived. Tasha entered first, sleek in a crimson dress, eyes sharp, scanning like a hawk. Renee followed, dripping perfume and gold. Nadine trailed behind, guilt written in every line of her face. Ms. B and Uncle Harris, her retired detective friend, were already seated, smiling politely, blending in as if they were just old neighbors. Tasha kissed the air. "Lorraine, this looks lovely," she said. But her eyes glittered with suspicion. "Just like old times," I replied evenly. "Family should eat together." Dinner began quietly. Carter chattered about school. Jade asked for extra cornbread. For a fleeting moment, the illusion of normalcy settled like a thin blanket, but I wasn't here for normal. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat. The room stilled. "There's something I'd like to share tonight," I said softly. "A gift Harold left for all of us." Tasha's fork froze mid-air. Renee's smile stiffened. I reached beneath my chair and placed a thick folder on the table. Harold believed in honesty. So tonight, we honor him by looking at the truth. The first document I laid out was a highlighted copy of Harold's will. Tasha, you told me Harold wanted you to manage everything. But here, in black and white, Harold left this house. And 70% of assets. To me, he safeguarded me first. Tasha's lips curled into a sneer. That's just paper. Harold told me things he never put in writing. You'll never know the full truth. Then maybe the recordings will help. I pressed play on the recorder in my pocket. Her own voice filled the dining room. She's old. She won't fight back. By the time she notices, the deed will already be signed. The room went silent. Jade's fork clattered against her plate. Carter blinked in confusion. Renee hissed, "Turn that off." But I didn't. Another clip played. This house, this money, it's mine now. The words echoed like poison. Nadine gasped, hand flying to her mouth. She hadn't heard these before. You actually said that she whispered. Tasha slammed her fist on the table. This is manipulation. She's twisting things, but I wasn't finished. I slid out the second folder, bank transfers, wire receipts, contracts with Strickland and Hayes, each stamped, each dated, forged with Malcolm's name after his death. I said calmly, fraud, conspiracy, theft. Miss Ina B. leaned forward, glasses glinting. Lorraine's right. These aren't accidents. These are deliberate. Then Detective Harris cleared his throat for the first time. His voice was calm, steady. I've reviewed these documents myself. Mrs. Sullivan has more than enough evidence for prosecution. If I walk into the DA's office tomorrow, charges will be filed by noon. For the first time. Tasha's mask cracked. Her hands trembled slightly, her face paling. You can't prove, can I? I cut in. Your emails to Renee, your contracts with Strickland. The hush money sent to Nadine. The trail is clear, and it ends with you. At that, Nadine broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't want this. Lorraine, they trapped me. I thought I was protecting you. I looked at her, voice sharp but quiet. You were protecting yourself, and look where it brought us. Mom Jade's voice trembled, small but sharp as a blade. You told me Daddy wanted this. You lied. Tasha's eyes darted to her daughter. Sweetheart, don't. Jade's voice cracked, tears streaking her face. Don't call me that. The room seemed to collapse into silence. Renee shot up, purse in hand. This is ridiculous. We don't have to sit here for accusations. But Harris rose too, blocking her path. His calm presence suddenly felt like steel. If you walk out, I'll assume guilt, and I'll be filing my report tonight. Renee's face flushed with fury, but she sat back down. I leaned forward, hands steady on the table. For months, you treated me like I was invisible, disposable. You thought age made me weak, grief made me blind, but you forgot one thing. My voice didn't tremble. I was Harold's partner for 43 years. I raised a son, buried a husband, paid bills, balanced books, worked double shifts as a nurse. Do you really think a red dress and a forged signature scare me? No one spoke. Even the children sat frozen, watching. This isn't revenge, I said softly. This is truth, and truth doesn't need to shout. Tasha's voice cracked. What do you want? Lorraine money control. Just say it. I looked at Jade and Carter, innocent eyes caught in the storm. I want their future protected. I want Harold's legacy honored, and I want you to face what you've done not with excuses, but with consequences. Detective Harris closed his notebook with a decisive snap. Fraud, conspiracy, elder abuse. Charges will be filed. You'll be lucky to walk away with probation. Tasha's face drained of color. Renee muttered curses under her breath. Nadine sobbed into her hands, and for the first time in months, I felt air rush into my lungs like freedom. That night, after everyone left, I sat alone at Harold's table. The dishes were cold, the cobbler untouched. But for the first time since Malcolm's death, I felt steady. The house felt like mine again, not because the papers said so, but because I had defended it. The fallout was only beginning. Court dates, headlines, custody battles, all of it loomed ahead. But tonight, the truth had been spoken in the very room where lies were born. And no matter what came next, one thing was certain. The woman they underestimated had just turned the tables. The morning after that dinner, the house felt quiet in a different way. No longer the suffocating silence of grief, nor the hollow quiet of betrayal. This was a silence with air in it, room to breathe, room to see things clearly. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, catching Harold's old coffee pot for the first time in months. My hands didn't shake as I poured a cup. I knew the battle wasn't over, but I also knew I had reclaimed the right to speak the last word inside this home. Detective Harris's report was filed that same week. The district attorney issued subpoenas. Renee faced clear charges, Derek as well, and Nadine, my friend, agreed to testify. Her face aged with shame. The machine of justice moved forward, heavy and unstoppable. Yet in the rhythm of gavels and paperwork, a question refused to stay quiet inside me. What do Jade and Carter need most? I could let the system crush everything, could watch Tasha pay in full. But each time I pictured those children sitting across from their mother behind a glass partition, my heart twisted. They had already lost their father. Were they now to lose their mother too? One afternoon, an envelope stamped with the jail's seal lay in my mailbox, Tasha's handwriting shaky, stained with watermarks spread across the page. Lorraine, I don't deserve forgiveness. I was blinded by money, by my mother's voice, by fear. I betrayed you. I betrayed Malcolm's memory. But please don't let Jade and Carter grow up believing their mother was nothing but a monster. I don't want money. I don't want power. I only ask for the chance to be a mother again. I set the letter down, glancing out the window at two children playing beneath the pecan tree. Justice had its path, but mercy, that was mine to decide. The visitation room was cold, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Tasha walked in, not in red silk, not in sharp heels, but thinner, her eyes hollow. She didn't sit. She knelt. Lorraine. Her voice cracked. I'm sorry, I traded everything for an illusion. I thought money could fill the hole Malcolm left. I was wrong. Please don't take Jade and Carter's mother away from them forever. I don't deserve it, but I beg you. I looked down at her clasped hands, the same hands that had signed forged papers. I thought of Jade, standing tall during that dinner, and of Carter whispering, Grandma, this is still our home, right? I reached and lifted Tasha to her feet. You broke everything, I said slowly, but for the sake of those children, if you truly repent and return as a mother in the real sense, then I will choose the harder road not to destroy, but to rebuild. She broke into tears, nodding over and over, and in that moment, I heard the mask fall away. The prosecutor wasn't pleased when I made my request. You could put her in prison. He insisted. I know, I said. Steady. But prison doesn't raise children. I'm not erasing her crime. I'm setting conditions. The agreement was struck not to let Tasha escape, but to make her accountable in the right way. No criminal prosecution if she entered rehabilitation counseling, parenting classes, community service, and complete removal from financial access. Temporary guardianship would remain with me until the family court deemed her safe as a mother. Renee and Derek would still face full charges. Nadine would testify, accepting civil consequences. Harold's trust was locked under new safeguards. Every decision required legal and independent audit approval. Justice stayed its course. Mercy carved a path for a mother to return. The day Tasha stepped through the door, Jade rushed forward, clutching her mother as though she might vanish. Carter wrapped his arms around her legs, sobbing. I stood back, eyes burning. Then Tasha turned toward me, and once again, she dropped to her knees, this time on the same wooden floor Harold had polished by hand. Lorraine, she wept, I'm sorry. For every forged signature, every call, every attempt to erase you from this house, I want nothing, only to be a mother. Under your eyes. I laid my hand on her shoulder. Stand up. Tasha, don't apologize with words. Apologize with tomorrow. The conditions you agreed to, they are a beginning, not an end. She nodded, whispering, "For the children, I will." And so we began not as enemies, but as two adults bound by the same duty protecting two young lives. A house with cracks can still let the sunlight in. Tasha began cooking simple meals, showing up on time, attending counseling faithfully each night. She read a chapter to Carter each weekend. She painted alongside Jade, learning to listen instead of control. And I steady, watchful taught, corrected, and set boundaries, not to dominate, but to ensure kindness was not blind. The Sullivan Foundation for Family Integrity grew stronger, offering legal aid to seniors exploited financially. Because I knew my story was not mine alone. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. Forgiveness meant choosing a future where children did not pay for the sins of their parents. Texas nights are filled with stars. I sat on the porch swing, listening to pecan leaves whisper, hearing the children's laughter spill from the kitchen. I thought about what had been lost and what we had managed to keep. I had been underestimated, nearly erased from my own legacy, but I had risen, fought back with intelligence and truth. And when the chance came to crush the one who knelt before me, I chose differently to place justice where it belonged and to give mercy where it mattered for the children's sake. Strength, I've learned, doesn't always lie in punishment. Sometimes it lies in conditional forgiveness, in courage to rebuild, in refusing to let pain turn us into those who cause pain. If you were me holding every piece of evidence to send your daughter-in-law to prison, would you forgive? If she truly repented and begged to return as a mother? Or would you let the law take its full course, knowing her children would grow up visiting her through glass justice or mercy, or both given to the right people? In the right measure, tell me, what would you choose and why?
Did you enjoy my story? What a journey it has been. I truly wonder, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? Would you have chosen silence to keep the peace, or would you have done what I did to reclaim your dignity? Let's meet in the comments below. I'm so curious to hear your thoughts. I'm reading every single one. Which city are you listening from tonight? If my story resonated with you, you can support me and help me bring more stories like this to the world by sending a super thanks. Your sweet support means the world to me and allows me to continue this journey with all of you. On the screen now, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend you watch next. There are so many more on my channel, each with its own lessons and triumphs. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell so you never miss a new chapter. Thank you for being here with me. Until the next story, with love and respect.